let's get started. It's a big day. Rebecca Otto is our state auditor, a very important person in the State Executive Council and an elected official for our entire state, not just northern Minnesota, but the whole state. Rebecca's nice enough to come up here with her husband Sean today. Thank you so much, first of all, for making the trek. It's not it's not that time of year when it's all that easy. It was into the wind, but today they go home with the wind, so that's good. And I just want to say that Tuesday Group started about, this is our end of our 5th year. We started as a result of the Obama inauguration in 2009. And it's gone so well since then. Thank you to all of you guys who participate and give us ideas about new talks. We need more. We've got another year coming up. We don't have many things scheduled for next year. This is our last meeting of this year, so we'll pick it up in January. One of the things I think I'm most proud of is the fact that we allow people to talk about any subject that's of interest in an intelligent and understanding way, and we want to continue that. So if people don't have to, we don't have to have speakers on one side of any issue, whether it's mining or whatever it is. We'd like to have speakers from all sides and listen to them and just what they have to say and discuss those issues intelligently. So that's what we expect will happen today, of course. One thing about asking questions, let's wait until Rebecca is through speaking, which may be in a half an hour or so. So we have plenty of time for questions, but let's keep the questions to that last half of the hour. And just one other quick note, it's happened in the past, so I'm just going to warn, let's not have speeches, let's ask questions. And then we can have a general discussion. And certainly Rebecca will stay a little bit longer if you have other things you want to talk about. We'll try to get out of here by about 1, a little bit after. Some of us have to go back to work. Not many of us, but some of us. And so I ask you to welcome our State Auditor, Rebecca Otto. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Okay. I have a lapel mic. You can't hear me, can you? It's not working?
No, that's for his recording.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, I got to use this. Yes. Can you hear me now? Yes. All right, great. Well, I'm Rebecca Otto, the Minnesota State Auditor, and I am very pleased and honored to be invited up here today to visit with you folks. And it's really a great group of people. I mean, it's a large group. I had no idea how many people would be here and who all of you are, but I'm honored that you would be willing to come to hear from a state auditor. Now, many of you might think that I might be a little bit boring, but I am not. So, all right. Yeah, I knew what you were thinking. So, yeah, auditors, they're good people, and they're special people. So, I'm a constitutional officer. Now, I hear people still laughing. I'm a constitutional officer. I'm required to run statewide once every 4 years. All constitutional officers are up on the ballot less than a year from now in November. And so I have the honor of serving statewide. Now, before I get into my job, personally, I'll tell you a couple things about me. First of all, this is my husband it'll be 26 years pretty quick here. So that's Sean, my husband. Who has been my chauffeur the last couple of days, which I am very fortunate because a lot of the time I do the driving myself. I don't have staff to drive me around, so I work hard for all Minnesotans. Personally, I've always I have a gene in my body. It's a fiscal conservative gene, and I can't do anything about it. And so it kind of drives what I do, even as a person. My husband and I, years ago, built a house with our own hands. My husband designed it. He had a drafting table, and we drew it, and it was too big. I said, I'm not going to clean all that space. So we measured our furniture, and we scaled it down to fit our furniture. And it's been a great house, but when we did it, we said, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. It's kind of my proactive, preventative approach, and it's also my fiscal conservative approach, in that if you have the chance to do something from the ground up, we looked at what are some of the things we should do with this house to make it truly affordable for us into our senior years, right? So we have passive solar heating, so our south side is glass. We're earth bermed on the north side. We bought a wind generator. It was used. We got the tower certified by an engineer, and the generator had been used as a demo for 4 years, and then we did the ditching and ran the wire and all that. But anyway, it makes a good portion of our power. And we recently installed a geothermal heating and cooling system. We'd been using a little boiler for backup heat if the sun didn't keep us warm or our special fireplace didn't keep us warm. And we paid that off in about 3 years. So our generator was paid off in 10 years. We were super insulated, airtight construction, mechanical ventilation. That took like a year to pay off. So we, as a couple, pinch pennies. And that's okay. That's me, that's my approach. Okay, so now you know that a little bit about me. We have a son who's 18 who just went to college, so I'm a new empty nester, new phase in my life. I'm doing okay. I'm still standing. I wasn't sure that was going to happen, but I am. And he's really, really happy. And that's all we can wish for our kids, is to hopefully help them find their passion in life. Okay, now on to my really exciting work. So the State Auditor's Office is charged with overseeing over $20 billion, that's a B, dollars spent per year by our local governments. So that can be our cities, our counties, our townships, our special taxing districts. We have service districts. They deliver services across the traditional jurisdictional boundaries of our local governments. And the way I see my job is that, and I work on every day, is to make sure that our governments are as transparent as possible, that their finances are as transparent as possible, and that they're eventually accountable to their residents and to the citizens of Minnesota. Because I truly believe that when government is truly transparent and people know where the money is, how it's being spent, that they may be more likely to trust their government. And to me, if we cannot trust our government and we think something's being hidden, we may not support our government, which keeps us safe, right? Public safety, our firefighters and our law enforcement folks, public health. There's so many things our local governments do. Maintaining our streets and highways, making sure our local bridges stay up when we drive across them. So there's lots of things that they do for us. So that's always been my focus when I've been in government. And I've served at the local level on a school board. I served as a state representative, well, that's crazy, in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and now as state auditor. And so that's my role, is to provide oversight. I have a staff of about 115. We have offices around the state. Our northern office is in Duluth, and then we have a Moorhead office, and then we have 3 in the southern part of the state, and then we have the metro office. So I do travel the state, and I represent people from around the whole state, and we have lots of beautiful areas. Okay, so that's that. When you're a constitutional officer, you're required to lead and be a leader. Sometimes leadership is really fun and easy. So I have the honor of serving as the president of the National State Auditors Association right now. I have the pleasure of working with professionals from around the country who work on government accountability and transparency on a daily basis. And it's a wonderful group because they want to share best practices about how do we do government better. And that's a good thing to be doing. And so it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. And I'm on several committees and get to work with even like U.S. Government Accountability Office, Office of Management and Budget. When President Obama put out those stimulus funds during the downturn, he wanted state auditors to make sure that there was greater accountability and transparency with those funds than ever before. So we talked to them on a weekly basis to make sure we could deliver what they were hoping for. All right, so now, as state auditor, I serve on 6 state boards, so it's about half of my job. I work on pension issues on a pension board, investment issues. We invest about $60 billion a year on the State Board of Investment. It's a lot of money, isn't it? Yes. I work on affordable housing through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency Board. So we're like the 6th largest bank in the state, and we ensure that there's safe, clean, affordable housing for our senior population, veterans returning from service, families, children. So that's really exciting for me as well. Dealing with the foreclosure crisis, all important issues. I also work with farmers on the Rural Finance Authority Board. So I'm giving you kind of that 30,000-foot view of my work. Now, I was asked today to talk about the Executive Council. Before that, though, I just want to tell you quickly about a special examination we did, and then I'll go to Executive Council. When leading, sometimes there's things that are more difficult to do. We issued something recently that you may have heard about, and it was on traffic diversion programs. This report would have not happened but for the Office of the State Auditor and our oversight of local governments. Some law enforcement agencies in our state were beginning to develop programs outside of the state traffic ticket. And we dove into that, got a lot of information out of the folks that are doing this. These law enforcement folks feel they've created a brilliant program where you don't get the traditional state traffic ticket. So nothing goes on your record. Let's say you're speeding, you've done something that's not quite right according to our laws, and you take a class, you pay a fine, and then you're done. The problem is that there's a lot of problems that have come up in my report. Actually, there's issues that arise out of these, the patchwork of programs around traffic law violations, which the legislature is going to need to review. There could be some public safety issues in terms of dangerous drivers. These programs do not send people's information to a centralized database. So when you're trying to figure out how many violations has a person had, we don't know. There's also issues around the fact that the state may lose their federal highway aid. Well, what kind of impact will that have on the taxpayers? We have to maintain our roads and bridges. I certainly hope we don't, but I know that we all care about that. So there's issues, and so that's what I get to do. Now, Executive Council. We have all kinds of things come before us, and I am a member. And it has made the news about the fact that we had 31 non-ferrous mineral leases that came before us recently. And it's not the first time. It's kind of annually we'll have things come before us. And we also have ferrous mineral leases come before us. Minnesota has been doing ferrous mining, or taconite mining, for over a century. We've done it. You all live fairly close to it. We generally know how to do it. But the state has never done non-ferrous mining. It would be new for us. We have awarded leases for mining companies to not only do exploration, but it could move to mining, okay? That's what the leases are for. It has the royalty rates and everything in them. In order to do that, a mining company has to, it's a lot of work. They have to go through permitting. Now, Minnesota, you know that we're above average, right? All the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all of our children are above average. We tend to have better policies in place, better rules and regulations in place for anything that we do, and I take great pride in that. So what is the issue? Well, I recently voted no on these 31 leases. And the reason being is that we've never embarked on this type of mining. I've been reviewing literature, which I do. I love resources and I like to read. I've gone to some U.S. Government Accountability Office reports that have reviewed hard rock mining around the country with some of our federal lands and even with state lands. And they have reports on taxpayers having to pick up water treatment costs later on, cleanup costs. And so USGAO is constantly trying to work on making sure that we get this right in other places in the country. So they've also done studies on lawsuits around this type of mining and the costs involved in that. So I want to, as state auditor, I voted no because I'm concerned after reading these good reports that are nonpartisan to make sure that in Minnesota that we do this right if we're going to embark on this type of mining. What I want to try to avoid is any cleanup costs being pushed off onto the taxpayers. Now, what are some of the issues? First of all, Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. We're a very water-rich environment. When you're doing non-ferrous mining, those minerals are embedded in a sulfur rock. It's just the way the formations occur. And so there are water and air quality issues that occur when this rock is exposed to, again, water and air with acid. Our lakes are very sensitive. If you change the pH at all, it impacts the ecosystem. And so as a state, we have good rules and regulations, but the thing that I'm concerned about is, do we truly know how to calculate? We're going to ask these companies for a damage deposit. It's called financial assurance, okay? And so that if we embark on this mining, and if anything were to go wrong, or there's required cleanup after water treatment, which there typically is, I think it's important that the mining companies internalize these costs into their business model, okay? So before they begin to mine, figuring out if the financials really work to embark on this kind of mining in our water-rich environment. And then getting strong financial assurances before we begin to mine. So that all sounds good. We do have good rules in place. But the issue for me is for instance, Polymet. It could be the first non-ferrous mine that opens in Minnesota. Currently, it's projected that it could take 500 years of water treatment if they embark on that type of mining. My question has been, how do you do the financials on that? Now, if you think about it, I can imagine, okay, our son is 18, so I can imagine his lifetime, and hopefully I'll be around for a lot of it. I can imagine his kids' lives, and trying to project numbers out that far was probably doable. What I have a hard time with is how many generations out is 500 years? How much will our technology change over that period of time? Because technology changes so rapidly in terms of water treatment and or anything else. So I'm concerned about our ability to calculate the financials on this to make sure that we get strong financial assurances from any mining company that wants to do this in our state. I'm also concerned about the transparency piece. Currently, there may be some wiggle room for our state government when they're working with our mining companies who want to provide jobs in our state. In terms of, it doesn't have to be transparent. I think in government we always need to be transparent because there's definitely, I've found after taking my vote, strong feelings on either side of mining. Really strong feelings on either side. And I understood that when I took my vote. But, I think we need a lot of transparency around that conversation if we were to embark on this type of mining as a state. In terms of, do we have the numbers right? The public needs to be assured we've got the numbers right, that we've done the calculations right, that we truly are protected. And if the financials don't work, we have to have that conversation. But if we can't see all of that as taxpayers, you can't see it, that could be a problem. You may not trust the process. So I guess it's making sure we have great transparency. It's making sure we get that money up front. And then finally, our rules and laws don't necessarily define the type of financial assurance we will accept. There's many different models that you can do. And I think we need something that's very strong and safe for our citizens of Minnesota, the taxpayers, like cash or cash equivalents. I liken it to this. You get your first apartment, and I lived in an apartment. You have white carpet, okay? It's the apartment you can afford. And the landlord says, well, your deposit is $1,000. We actually own some real estate and we have rental units. It's going to be $1,000 for your damage deposit. Let's say it's a lot of money for you to come up with because you are trying to start your career and you value every single penny because you want that back, right? Maybe you're going to use it to pay student loans. Your niece and nephew come over and they say, Auntie Becky, they might call me that. Can we have our cherry Kool-Aid? And you look at them, you look at your white carpet and you think of the $1,000 and you say, no, you will not be drinking cherry Kool-Aid in my apartment, because you don't want to have to lose your damage deposit. And so you have skin in the game, and we charge a damage deposit, my husband and I. I don't manage any buildings anymore, but I liken that to these strong financial assurances from mining companies. Make sure there's real skin in the game so that they have a real interest, if we do embark on this type of mining, to protect Minnesota taxpayers, okay? Now, since I've taken this vote, and I'll let you ask questions in a minute because now I'm just kind of going on, but when I took this vote, some people said, oh, you're anti-mining, you're pro-mining, you're anti-mining, here's what I am. I'm pro-taxpayer, okay? And so I would like to build a bridge between people who feel strongly on either side, because I think I can. That's my job as a leader, is to spur this conversation, have a discussion, make sure our government is truly transparent. And if we can create jobs and not harm anything in our state, then that will happen. But we have to make sure that there is transparency and that we actually know how to calculate these numbers. And that's the question. Okay? Is that enough? Did I make any sense? I don't see any eyes closed yet, so I haven't bored you yet. And I am very, very tired. It's been about 3 weeks of really, really long days. So my husband will let me know how I did in the car. He might say, you made no sense. But I'm ready to take questions if that's okay.
Maybe, since you've got such a big audience and we only have one mic, I'll run around with it, okay? And let's kind of go in order. We'll start over here.
Thanks for coming up. We recently had Bill Carter come and talk about the history of copper mining and how it all works, and it's complicated. And one of the things that really made an impression on me, he said, you know, the local companies, they're great. They're doing a great job. And they're very likable. He says, but the real decisions are made by these multinational corporations, and you will never see them. You will never see them, the people who really make these decisions. So how do the financial assurances get recognized and signed off on by the parent company way out there somewhere?
Good question.
That is a good question. Now, I'm not an expert on all of this. I'm still getting resources, but I did ask the DNR over a year ago when we were voting on these types of leases, because I've been asking a lot of questions. Because in some states, the parent companies can change. So we have the junior companies on the ground, the development companies that don't really have a lot of assets. Yet the people with the assets are the foreign corporations that may come in, right? Okay, and they've got investors, and their job is to make money. That's their job, right? So the business model has to work. What I was told by the DNR, and again, there's a lot more detail, but generally the state of Minnesota tries to be smarter and better, and they want to get the parent company on the hook. And so what happens if they change? What happens? Well, if they get sold or whatever else or acquired, the DNR told me about a year ago, and I hope I'm communicating this properly, that they don't issue another permit until they get the next parent company on the hook. So if the business is continuing and you have a new parent company step in, they say that they can, take care of that through our process, that we try to be smarter. But if the commodity prices were to drop, another concern, if the commodity prices were to drop and the economics don't work anymore, and let's say we're engaged in it, in a company, maybe the parent company dissolves, from what I understand, there's not a lot of assets in those on-the-ground local development companies. And so when you're trying to make sure, let's say we get stuck with some cleanup costs, you don't want to be stuck. You want that money up front so that no matter what happens, we are okay as Minnesotans. Does that make sense? And if the state wanted to say, we'll get this much from them, and then we'll just keep talking about it. You do annual reviews to see how conditions have changed, or if you need more money, less money, as technology changes for potential cleanup. We'll do those reviews, but what I don't want to have ourselves experience is the market drops out and they stop and there just isn't enough money there. Really, again, our environment is unique. Should copper be mined? It's going to be mined. We are very dependent on it. The question is this the right place, and will the economics work with our water-rich environment? That's all. Every site is different, so that's the question.
Let me ask a question. I'm just sitting next to Elton right now. Are you aware of how financial assurance strategies are determined now based on the law that we have at the moment? And do you think that will change if it's not adequate?
Well, I have to have more meetings with the DNR. They offered again to sit down with me and talk to me, because I talk to a lot of staff there to make sure I understand what's really going on. And they have offered to meet with me, but I haven't been available since my last vote, so I'm hoping maybe after Thanksgiving I can sit down with them again and talk to them, because I really think short of law changes and rule changes, there's some things they can do short of that, because they could be more transparent, in my opinion, without having to change anything. But as a state auditor, watching out for the taxpayers' interests, being proactive and preventative in my approach and fiscally conservative, I think that in order for the government to respond, no matter who the administration is, because right now it's Dayton, it could be somebody else. We don't know. I don't care who the administration is. I want to make sure we get it right. Well, the way you hold a government accountable is to make sure that the citizens of the state know what's going on. So whether I'm here Governor Dayton's here, whoever's here, we want to make sure the public understands what's at stake so that they can push whoever is in that elected office to do the right thing. Now, do we have a perfect model? I don't think it's perfect. Legislators, if they want to change policies, that's their job. I don't get to do that. I'm not a lawmaker. The Executive Council really can't stop mining either. You know, some people have said, well, just stop it in its tracks. We don't really have the authority to do that. What I do have the ability to do is try to have a thoughtful conversation with people from both sides and in the middle about mining in our state to see if we can't come to an understanding of what the very best model could be. And looking at GAO reports, you know, they study the financial assurances for Bureau of Land Management. And one of the reports I looked at said, you guys, you don't have it right. You still have kind of a deficit. You don't have enough on hand. And then another report GAO put out for Bureau of Land Management, they said, what you're short, you're applying as an aggregate. You need to show at every site what you're, you know, how short you are and get that adjusted. So I like watching the federal government because GAO is excellent. But policymakers could determine, you know, they could change what we're doing. DNR might be able to change rules. That's a very long, drawn-out process. So short of that, what I can do is talk to all the professionals, the people that are involved, you know, try to get commitments of, we will make this as transparent as possible. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going down the line, down this way. Questions? Okay.
Yes, I'm wondering now, you've been talking about mining all the way through here, but you never said very little about exploration. And from what I understand, your vote was on exploration. I was born and raised in this country, and I can remember as a kid, my mom would take us out berry picking, and they had these test pits, and that's where they tested for ore. Now, tell us something why you voted against exploration.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So in our state, historically, you know, we've had taconite mining for some time. We award leases kind of annually for, you know, ferrous and non-ferrous mining. And what some people will tell you is that historically, a lot of those leases have only been for exploration. So I think that's what you're talking about. And some people have said these leases are simply for just drilling little holes in the ground. It's just exploration. There has been a lot of exploration that has occurred. The state of Minnesota uses the exploration work to map our deposit. So we're not paying necessarily state workers to go out and do that. It's kind of a public-private partnership, may you say, to understand what our deposit is. Mining's been in our state for a very, very long time. It's written into our laws. It's kind of alluded to in our Constitution. But these leases, I have a general counsel who's my legal counsel, and when we approve these leases, it is for exploration and it also can lead to mining. So we have the royalty rates and everything in there. So for some people, they'll say, well, so why are you doing that as state auditor? It's so far off. It may take many, many years for them to determine if the economics are right, where the deposit is, how the technology they're going to use to pull the non-ferrous minerals out of the ground. Yes, it could take many, many years. And, but as state auditor today, with how strongly I know people feel on both sides of this issue, I feel that it's really important for me, while I have an opportunity, to try to drive the conversation, because we all love this state. We all want jobs. We want people to be able to put food on the table. And copper is right now. Copper, nickel, palladium, there's lots of minerals that we have in Minnesota are being used for all kinds of things. But my vote is, the leases passed, by the way, just in case you don't know. The other constitutional officers voted for them. But some people say, well, why'd you do it? Well, they went through. But I need to make a point. I need to draw to people's attention, whether we embark on this or not, whether the mining companies decide this is fruitful or not, that we understand what's at stake for us as a state and for the taxpayers of our state. So it's a really good question, and I thank you for asking that.
The exploration could be in another part of the state. You know, so what do you voted against it?
Well,
Exploration.
what I did was I voted to, and this is what's happened, I'm here, you invited me here, to have that discussion, which I am having now. And I think it's really important that we do, regardless of where you stand on the issue. Mining is part of our heritage as a state, and it has provided good jobs. And Representative Tommy Rukavina, who I serve with in the legislature, is ferocious about trying to make sure that mining continues in the state. And he knows that he lives it and he breathes it, and that's great. And I saw him yesterday. But my vote doesn't mean that mining stops. Now, what I've said to some people who said, you're going to kill mining in this state, I said, is there something that I don't know? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, if we were to get full financial assurance on this type of mining in our water-rich environment, and we asked for that, that full deposit up front as well as we can calculate it, does that mean the business model does not work anymore? And I don't know if I don't know something, or if somebody thinks it's not going to happen and they don't want me. I don't know. I know there's been strong reaction, and I think some of it, there's just real sensitivity around this issue. But I think it should be safe. I think it should be safe, and it's really important for taxpayers to understand what this means to us. Okay? So I just handed it to her.
Has there ever been any leases on private property gone up for sale? Because that's one of the issues. We happen to be right across the lake from private property owners who may have drilling right by the lake.
So, I've been in my office, I'm going to be going into my 8th year, and since taking votes on timber, we do timber leases, we do all kinds of things, but on the Non-Ferrous, we put sites up for bid all the time, and yes, you could be a private surface landowner, but most people do not own the mineral rights. A lot of people have severed mineral rights, and what that means is the state owns it. And it's actually the taxpayers that own it, technically. So a year or two ago, time flies when you're having fun, but about a year or two ago, there were definitely some private surface land owners that were impacted by these leases. We certainly heard from them. They came to St. Paul in front of the Executive Council and told us how deeply, deeply concerned they were. And the state has put up private lands before private surface lands, but they don't get bid on that much. I think the economics of this type of, pulling these non-ferrous minerals out has changed, and it's beginning to be economically viable. As this gentleman had said, we've been exploring for years and years. We're mapping it all out. But when it becomes economically feasible, that's when they may start engaging in it and really trying to get into it, because the economics work. But I can tell you, because we've all gotten letters, all the Executive Council members, when there's been private surface lands involved, there's a lot of emotion. People are, these are our castles, our homes, Some people have had cabins for generations. Some people just live in the community and they work in the community. Some people thrive off the land, So, yes, it is possible. And my husband one day, we try to walk every morning. That's our date. We go out before I go to work and before I've taken a shower, and we talk. And when I told him about this when it originally came up, he always asked me lots of questions to understand. He said, do you mean to tell me that our cabin, we have a little tiny log cabin in Crow Wing County, he said, do you mean to tell me that they could put our land up, the mineral rights under our land for sale, and that they could come in and mine? And I said, yes, honey, that's true. I've got maps from the DNR, and it's possible for any of us. So for some people, they'll say, well, wait a minute, I have, my property rights here, how could you do this? Well, it's complicated. But, when you have a lake on your property, you don't own the water, right? It's the DNR that has control of that. It's really similar for most of our minerals, too, that the state actually owns most of that. Not all of it, but quite a bit. And so it is a shock, definitely, and emotional for folks. And I said to my husband, if it happened to us, we're going to have to pick that cute little cabin up and move it. But, that's definitely very controversial as well.
Great. Those houses on Eagles Nest, they don't move too easy, do they? Who's next back here?
I'm Bernice Norgard, Mayor of Babbitt. I also have worked in mining since 1974, so a little my history. But we have such good environmental and employee safety rules in this state. if we don't get these precious minerals here in this state, they'll have to go to some third world country where they have no regulations. And that pollution and that disrespect for human life does generate a problem worldwide. I guess my question is, don't you think it's better to do it here where we have all these wonderful rules and regulations? And I do commend you for standing on your principles.
Thank you.
General service.
Thank you. You get exercise that way. Mayor, I apologize for not recognizing you when I started speaking, and I don't know if there's other elected officials here. Being a mayor is hard work. We work with those local officials in my office. We are good in Minnesota, we know that. We care about safety and public, employee safety in the mines. We've done this, we've done mining for a century. And so I don't get to decide, I hear what you're saying exactly about how do we treat people, do we want to have this stuff mined in other countries where there's major water impacts, major land impacts? Do those people fall victim to these major foreign national corporations? And it's possible. One thing that I'm able to do, so I don't get to decide, because I'm not a policymaker, whether mining happens or not. Right now it's in our laws. And I'm not saying, I'm not on the anti-mining, pro-mining side, I'm in the pro-taxpayer side. So I'm really trying not to be judgmental on, some of the other stuff. I'm just trying to focus in on that financial piece to make sure we get that right. And the people that have worked in the mines, many of them have excellent stories about, look, this has put food on the table for me and my children. We can pay taxes. And so I know, and you probably feel very strongly about making sure it's there. On the State Board of Investment, your point about, how are people treated in other countries? Are there major pollution impacts? As being a member of the State Board of Investment, with a lot of pension money, when we're invested in different corporations or different businesses, we do some natural resource investing in the state of Minnesota. And we get something called proxy votes. We vote our proxies to be good fiduciaries. And proxies will come before us sometimes around how people are treated, either the workers in an industry or that if it's creating major pollution impacts. That might be a liability to the company, and it might end up affecting them financially, which could impact the stockholders. And so if something comes through and says there's horrible impacts on the environment in this one country, and it's going to come back and bite that corporation, we can vote a proxy that says they have to do an environmental study or they have to do a report to make sure they're on their toes and doing the right things in countries. Now I know most of them are as good as the United States. We're pretty good here. We're really good in Minnesota. And it's possible that we might be able to get this right. And all I'm trying to do is carve out a very small piece of making sure that you, your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, that someday they're not, because the corporations will come in and they'll do their work, they'll provide some jobs, and then they leave. What I don't want them to leave behind is anything that all of us have to pay for. Does that make sense? So it's not a further strain on our budgets over time. So it's that proactive preventative, measure twice and cut once so you don't waste your lumber. Does that make sense? That's what we did when we built our house. We were trying to save our pennies. I hope I answered your question.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Pam Davis. I'm going to see if I can word this because I've never been able to make sense of this concept. It seems as if all that we're trying to protect is the cost we're going to incur to repair potential damage that can happen from mining. And there are so many things, as we all know, that you can't put a price tag on. Mm-hmm. Once the damage is done, yes, there's restoration, there's all these kinds of things, but once the ecosystem as it is damaged, it's almost impossible to, no matter what the cost is, restore it to its natural state, to whatever we define that as. Granted, you're the auditor, so your focus is on the finances, but as protecting the taxpayers, we have, to me, the responsibility of protecting our, I don't like the word resources, but the natural wonder, in particular of the state that's so unique to the entire world. So what is my question? The question is, why do we have to only use how much it's going to cost to repair the ecosystem as the strategy for working with these mining companies, when indeed all you have to put is a dollar amount on that, when we know that's impossible to do? I'm not sure of that.
Good luck.
I liked listening to you. That's a good question. I would say this to you. I'm trying really hard to answer questions. I'm not trying to dodge anything. I'm doing my best. You know, whether mining should happen or not in our state, that's a policy question. Policy gets set by the legislature. Currently, it's on our books that this is what we do. I'm not in the legislature. I am not the governor. You know, the governor gets to sign or veto legislation that comes through. And I think that you would have people that would say, I work for the mines. I've done it for years. I think these are good jobs. I've been able to support my family, send my children to college, whatever it is. And some folks would prefer that it not be touched. Okay? And for me as the state auditor, my role is more limited. And our state does require reclamation, right? So they're supposed to restore the land to its original state. I've been doing so much reading. You know, obviously you're going to disturb wildlife if you were to have the machines come in, you know, all the work that they would do. And it would take time for things to rebound. And there are scientists that work on all of that and can monitor it, you know, baseline populations and things like that. But so there's impacts. And it's just really understanding. I go back to that financial piece because there's a lot of other issues. But it all comes around to, what is it really going to cost? Can we really do the numbers and get it right? There are some people that said, well, we certainly hope, we believe, we think, we hope that the mining companies would get this right if they come in. We think they will. They care so much about us. Well, I'll tell you what. My husband and I were business for years. We cared. But you are there to make a profit and to make it the best deal you can for your investors and say, we've got a great thing going here. We know we've got a very rich deposit in the state of Minnesota. We've been exploring, as this gentleman said, for a long time and mapping it out. So the question is, will it work in this environment? And I can't, I can do my piece, that's all I can do, but I think it's really important to talk about, right?
And actually, I just figured out my question.
Oh.
Instead,
Okay.
I'll just say this quickly.
Yes?
Instead of it all being focused on restitution, etc., why can't we tie it into, for example, since jobs is one of the biggest issues, why can't we have that accountability from the mining companies be instead focused on providing jobs, the sustainability in different areas, so it's not, so that the restitution is in how many jobs that you continue to employ and all sorts of various things. I guess that's.
I think I know what she's saying.
Let's come back to that. Give somebody else a chance. Who else back in this corner? The mayor? Who's the mayor?
I guess I've got some first-hand knowledge. As we, or North Shore Mines out one area, they will be doing reclamation. And those trees are growing by the next year. The grasses are growing. It doesn't take long for the reclamation to come. And the wildlife, when I'm out in the drill, well, I've been retired for a few years now, but the wolves would come and visit me once in a while. I see a deer, a moose, a bear. So it's not like we're ravaging everything like some people seem to think.
Okay, I've got,
Who's got a question back here?
Oh.
You want to come up? If I can't throw it that far. I don't think it would last.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank you for differentiating between iron ore mining and copper nickel mining, because so often everybody keeps talking about mining, and you know, iron ore mining has been a good thing for this country, this area. I appreciate the difference between rust versus sulfuric acid. But what I'd like to know is, can you give us an idea of the percentage that the state will receive in comparison to what a mining company will get out of this? you know, like, let's say 5 billion tons of copper is taken out, what that might be, and what the percentage of our state would receive monetarily? And my other question is, would you ever consider running for the U.S. Senate?
Oh, gosh. Well,
You just got promoted.
and that concludes our talk. No, so thank you for your questions. Have a nice day. No, okay. Wait, now let's see if I can remember her first question. You just shocked me. My gosh. Yeah, Congress is a whole different issue, a whole different story. I think it would drive me crazy. But anyway, her question was, yes, how much would the state get out of it? The last executive council meeting that we had people come up and testify at the table for these 31 non-ferrous mineral leases. And there was a gentleman who came up to the table who presented some information on what the state gets out of mining in terms of royalties and everything else versus tax revenues and royalties and all of that. So how much are the mining companies actually giving back? And is it worth it to us for a state? There was a gentleman who presented. I didn't get to write the numbers down. I think there's been a study done. U of M might have done a study because I know he was pulling data out of that. I can't tell you, is it Nancy? I'm sorry. Well, anyway, the woman that just asked the question. I can't tell you the exact number. I don't know off the top of my head. What I do recall from that meeting was the governor was actually on the telephone. He called in because he was recovering. Remember, I don't know if you heard about it up here, but he had a procedure on his hip done. And so he called into the meeting, and I recall him saying he was concerned by the numbers that were presented by this gentleman that had come in about how much we're really getting out of it. Because there's got to be something in it for us too, jobs and other revenues. And you know, there's some folks that talk about the school trust fund, and it helps to fund our schools. So just making sure, the governor seemed a little disturbed by what he heard. So I think my guess is we'll get more information from the DNR at a future meeting on what it really means, and I can ask for that myself. So I have further information. Because again, I love resources and I love to get the data. But I know the governor was concerned about what we're really getting out of it and where those revenues end up. And again, understanding what it means to us as a state, the local economies, the communities, and you know, there's been some studies done around mining. And when it's good, it's really, really good. And when it's bad, it's horrid. No, you know what I mean in terms of sometimes there's great jobs and it's going, and then sometimes it just really drops off because you're impacted by commodity prices. So sustainable jobs is always a good thing. We like that, right? We like good paying jobs that are around for some time. And that's always our struggle. And I would say that in greater Minnesota, from my experience talking to mayors from around the state, some of our mayors will say, my gosh, we just don't have opportunity for economic development here. We have an aging population. We can't keep the kids in the community. So how are we going to be a vibrant community? You know, have a good, strong tax base. That is something the legislature struggles with, the governor struggles with, the U.S. senators, all these people talk about how do we stimulate the economy in these communities. So I'm not a mining expert. I'm focusing more on the finances. But these are all questions, and I'm sure the mayor will talk about that too for the what's important for her community. To lawmakers, talk to your lawmakers, I guess, for a lot of this stuff in terms of if there's anything that they can do.
When we're back here, maybe, and then I'll come up this side. Ann, you want to stand up?
My question relates to what value are we losing in terms of tax dollars from property owners as they're displaced or their value goes down? What kinds of economic activity is being displaced?
Now you have to run. Here, I'll reach. Do you mind if we reach over you? Is that okay? Thank you. Pardon my reach. That's what I'm going to say at Thanksgiving in a couple of days. Pardon my reach. I still have to go home and prepare the makings for our Thanksgiving dinner, but we're going to be okay. So I have had some people write to me. I have lots of people writing to me, giving me all kinds of different perspectives around mining. And I had somebody recently write to me and say they were really concerned personally and for their neighbors. Someone reported to me, and I haven't followed up to find out if it's factual, that some folks are having a hard time now selling their places. the real estate market's gotten a little funky for people that are close to where there might be exploration or leases that have been awarded by the state. And so I'm sure that there are local impacts for homeowners. That's what I'm hearing. And, you know, in other things, I know when the private surface lands came up a year or two ago, I think there's been some in each batch, you know, some people have had this land in their family forever. I talked to one gentleman who lives near me who has hunting land that he and his 3 brothers have, and they've hunted on it for, I think, generations. And he said to me, well, I'm okay if, you know, if they want to explore, you know, I'll make a deal with the mining company. We'll get another tract we can hunt on. You know, so he wasn't really concerned, but there are people that are concerned. And if your place is your nest egg, you know, or whatever, you know, it could have financial implications for people personally. You know, again, something important to perhaps share with your lawmakers, for the policymakers. But I am hearing, you know, and can this stuff have an impact on other economies? You know, the economists can talk about that too. Because you can have very positive things, as the mayor said, and there can be some other things that change. You know, there's other economies. There's hunting, there's fishing. You know, some people just come to watch the birds. You know, you were talking about birds today. And some people go paddling. A lot of lakes in our state, right? And so there's lots of ways we stimulate our economy, and some of it's tourism. Places that have lots of water get quite a bit of tourism, so that can be very seasonal, which is a challenge too for our communities. So,
Johnny, right here.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. You said you've done a lot of research, and I understand that you made educated yourself before you made this vote. Could you tell me how you think the other people on the executive committee rationalized their vote? What was their line of thinking that's different from yours?
Yeah, it's I'm just kidding. Gotta make sure nobody falls asleep in the room. You know what? I'll tell you this. I serve with some great people, other constitutional officers. What you will find when you're an elected leader is things aren't always easy. You don't always agree on everything. You're always going to have people that love what you did, and you have people that hate what you did, and then you have some people in between that don't know what you did. And I think we all come with different perspectives to that council. You know, the Attorney General focuses on the legal, I focus on the financial. The governor, you know, he does this broad, you know, he's really the, you know, he's more policy, jobs, economy, but, you know, for me, it's really that financial piece. So from my perspective and my job in being pro-taxpayer and transparency and accountability, that informed my vote after reading more research and creating concerns for me that I felt I needed to voice. We have another meeting coming up pretty quick here, so I'll be seeing my fellow constitutional officers soon, and I'm sure we'll have more discussion about the issue. I don't know if more leases are coming before us right now or not. I haven't heard from the DNR. I don't have my board packet, but I'll get it soon. So I can't say anything negatively about my colleagues. I think we all come to work every day. We do our very, very best for Minnesotans, and at the end of the day, we get judged at election time as to whether we should return or not return. And so all I can do is my very best and try to inform the conversation. Thank you for the question.
We're going to just take one more question. Brad, back here.
Yeah,
That's okay.
He'll yell.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. This has obviously become a hot political issue in this area, and you're under political attack. For those of us that would like to support you financially and otherwise, how do we do that? Do you have a website? Do you have something we can go to get that information as to where to send contributions, etc.?
I didn't set this up.
No, well, you could have cut him off. As an elected official, you get held accountable at election time. I have my state website, which is my state website, and I have another website that talks about, you know, when I have to do the political side, which I have announced that I am running again, and because I believe there's more that I can do. But anytime you come to election time, most elected officials will have a kind of campaign website that has to be separate from their government work, right? You want to follow all the laws. And so I do have a website, it's RebeccaOtto.com, and it has lots of information about me personally, professionally, some of the work I do, some of the awards I've received. for some of the work that I've done. And so that's how you can find me, contact me. My phone number is, I print my phone number and my address. You can find me pretty easily if you want to talk to me. So, but it's part of our whole system, right? So some people may oppose me and some people may not, and then some may not know about me, right? So anyway, but I, first of all, want to wish everybody a very, very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful time, safe travels. And I want to thank you again for listening to me as the state auditor. When I introduce myself, sometimes people take a step back. And I brush my teeth every day, I promise. And I always tell them, I don't look at your tax return, so don't worry. And they always go, oh, thank goodness. No, I'm totally serious. It's happened to me over and over. But if you have further questions for me, if you want to send me an email, if you want to call me at the office about my work, I answer my phone. Okay? So feel free to contact me. Well, I hope people are listening to me. I'm kind of fun to listen to, aren't I? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. All we can do when we're in public office and when we're leading is to try to drive the conversation, build the bridges, listen and learn, and try to move forward. We have such a legacy in the state of good government. We have a legacy of providing good jobs and having strong industries. And I am an optimist. Here's the positive. I'm an optimist. I still am. And that's why I'm running again. And we need to be optimistic about our future and getting things right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great job. Tough subject. Listen, we have the Tuesday Group mug for you. I thought you might need a stiff drink after this, so I filled it up.